You just cut a hole in it? It's party time.
7 years after Until Dawn, Supermassive Games released The Quarry, a spiritual successor to their breakout hit that pays homage to classic horror titles like Friday the 13th and Sleepaway Camp. Introducing their largest cast of characters thus far, we continue to make decisions that can lead to survival or death for any one of them. Like my previous Supermassive videos, I'll count kills in my own playthrough while pointing out various points in the story a character's death can occur, whether or not it's included in my own game, and at the end I'll include the minimum and maximum kill count that can be achieved. So let's head into Hackett's Quarry, where the camp counselors spend an extra night under a full moon, blissfully unaware of what prowls the surrounding forest. How many can I keep alive? Let's find out.
What doesn't kill you will make you stronger.
Well, I haven't killed you. Yet. And you're still pretty pathetic.
I start by assigning the characters evenly between my wife and I in one of the best features this game has to offer. The nature of these games makes them a blast to play with a group, so implementing the co-op and movie modes made it easier to enjoy The Quarry with friends. The game begins with Ariana Grande's Moonlight playing in the moonlight. Laura kills the music to discuss the L word. Did someone respond with a thank you after the other said I love you?
Lost, Max, we're lost.
Oh, yeah, we're in bumfuck nowhere, so Laura pulls a map out that puts her boyfriend Max into a trance that takes his eyes off the road long enough to have to swerve and miss whatever is chilling in the street. They go off-roading, but Max's mommy mobile isn't built for that and comes to a complete stop. Confused about what they almost ran over, Max gets out to examine the damage and asks Laura to grab his tools from the trunk. She notices a rejection letter from Landis University, a clear reference to John Landis, who wrote and directed one of the all-time best werewolf movies, An American Werewolf in London, whose son is also named Max for a bit of a double reference. Laura brings Maximilian his tools but gets bored simply shining a light so he can see, and begins walking around until she catches a glimpse of something in the woods. Like an absolute psychopath, she tells Max she wants to check it out. She starts wandering through the fucking forest by herself and finally gets too frightened by the noises and runs back to the car right as Max finishes up. They try to drive off but realize that they're stuck in mud, so just grab your floor mat and put it under the tire for traction. Instead, they arouse the suspicion of the local fuzz, who questions the damage to their car. Laura lies to him, saying they hit a pothole which sent them careening off the road, but the cop doesn't buy it. He pulls their car out of the forest and back onto the road and demands to know what they're doing. Laura explains they're counselors for the summer camp Hackett's Quarry that wanted to drive in a day early just to scope things out. She claims she spoke to owner Chris Hackett and had it cleared with him, but the cop creepily tells them they aren't going to make it to camp and need to bunk up at the Harbinger Motel for the night. He marks it on her map and Laura tricks him into very briefly showing her where the camp is located, but promises to go to the motel. Laura gets back in the car and immediately tells Max they're going to camp, and expresses her dissatisfaction with being called a ma'am.
If he called me ma'am one more time, I was gonna shove that badge up his dick hole.
I'm kinda into ma'ams.
They show up at Hackett's Quarry where Max gets a little upset since no one is there, and Laura admits she only left a message and didn't actually speak to Chris about showing up early. She looks around because why not, and peers into a storm cellar, noticing how bad the posture is of the individual down there, and she calls Max over to take a peek. However, he doesn't see anything, so she smashes the lock with a hammer and they descend the stairs.
You've seen The Evil Dead, right?
I don't think Laura has seen a single horror movie with the decisions she's making. Max elects to stay by the stairs and lets Laura do the exploring until he finally tells her they should just go to the motel. But before she can respond, he's suddenly tackled. Laura rushes over to find Max completely covered in blood.
I think I'm bleeding a lot.
It's a flesh wound, you'll be okay. Laura can choose to bail on him or help, and naturally I choose to help, but she can't carry him all the way up the stairs and gets knocked out Dexter style by the cop. He angrily yells about them not going to the motel and does a few camp pops in the cellar. The prologue ends as the title card appears and we meet Eliza, a fortune teller who plays a similar role as Dr. Hill and the curator from Until Dawn in Dark Pictures. We fast forward to the end of summer camp while the kids are bussed out and the counselors wave bye-bye. We're introduced to Kaitlyn and Jacob, who is getting shit from his longtime friend about already missing his summer fling Emma. There's still a couple bags left, so Jacob heads to the lodge to grab those, and along the way we meet Ryan, a brooding loner type, and both Dylan and Nick who lock Jake out. He rounds the corner and opens the window, then confronts Nick for making things needlessly annoying while he grabs the bags. He brings them to the van and has Kaitlyn lay out how his life will go as soon as they leave camp.
Love, stability, engagement, marriage, house, kid, affair, kid, divorce, loneliness, child support, visitation lawsuit.
Jake just wants to spend more time with Emma and asks Kaitlyn how he'd make the van undrivable. She provides a couple of options, but wants to remind Jake that even if they can stay an extra night, Emma will move on from him as soon as they leave camp. I elect for Jake to take the rotor arm before others begin coming outside. We cut to Abigail and Emma, who ponder whether or not it's worth breaking into this cabin to grab their bags, instead of finding Chris Hackett, who has the keys. Abby suggests they just get some keys and hop in a golf cart towards the lodge, only for Abby to get the first kill of the game as she runs the squirrel over and crushes it. Jesus Christ, dude! She quickly gets over that trauma once she sets her eyes upon Nick, though. Ryan saunters up too and begins talking about this podcast he was listening to.
Is it about me?
If anyone here had a podcast about them, it'd be me.
Yeah, if there was a podcast called How to Look and Smell Like a Bat.
He explains that they're far too boring for their own podcast, and that he was listening to an episode about a local tale called The Hack of Hackett's Quarry. It details a fire that broke out at a nearby freak show that killed the owner, who now haunts the forest searching for her son Silas the dog boy. Supermassive actually created a 6-part podcast set in the world of the game titled Bizarre Yet Bonafide, where the hosts discuss supernatural cases. It leads directly into the mystery surrounding Hackett's Quarry and makes for a fun listen, but Chris wants the counselors off his property now and tells them to fuck off. He realizes they can't exactly do that without the car keys, and he takes his favorite counselor Ryan with him. Whenever Chris is on screen, the music changes up to a kind of western sounding theme, similar to David Arquette's iconic Dewey character in Scream. Before he can look for the keys, a call comes in and Ryan has to wait outside the office and elects to listen to the podcast instead of dropping eaves. Ryan asks where Chris's kids are at, who apparently pieced out early, and then Chris finds the van keys. But we already know it's all for naught when Jake half-assedly tries to start the van and feigns surprise when it doesn't work. This was always so weird to me because Kaitlyn told him exactly how to make the van non-functional and doesn't say a single thing about it. Chris goes full gamer rage mode, shocking the counselors as he seems to be panicking and tells them they need to stay put for the night inside the lodge and never go outside. He says he'll be back in the morning to get them out of there and drives away, but these teenagers aren't going to listen to that nonsense and instead want to throw one epic last party to close out the summer. Jacob assigns everyone a task to get things prepped, and as they split up, we see some strangers in the woods watching and smearing blood all over the skin. These damn skincare techniques are getting out of hand. Emma is an influencer who has been without her phone for 2 months, so now that she has it, she records content to upload once they have service again. But she can only wait on Jake's lackluster lockpicking for so long and boots the door open. They're looking for drinks and snacks, which are nowhere to be found in here. However, Jacob gets lockpick redemption and opens the back room, where they find beers and a shotgun paired with a code to the safe in the other room that contains shells. But what's more exciting is Jake finding an old bag of peanut butter pops.
Pop, pop, peanut butter pops. Pop, pop, pop them in your mouth.
Hell yeah, dude! We switch over to Dylan and Ryan, who are responsible with getting some phones charged in Mr. Hackett's office. While waiting for them to charge, Dylan flirts with Ryan and looks around Chris's office, eventually finding a hidden trap door. He jokes about the 2 camp counselors that never showed up being locked down there and climbs down, but after a few moments has had enough and heads up the ladder. He locates another hidden room, but this one is for surveillance, and Ryan notices they're all trail cams, probably just there in case kids go in the woods during camp. Once their phones are all charged up, we join Nick and Abigail, who are crushing hard on each other, and saunter through the forest looking for firewood. Abby is an artist and wants to sketch the view, but then a cute baby piggy comes out, followed by a mama boar that charges them. Nick pushes Abby out of the way and recalls advice from Jurassic Park that encourages the boar to leave. They joke about his close encounter.
How do you know it was the mommy pig?
I got a pretty good look.
Ugh, not the pigussy. We leave them there and check in with Kaitlyn, who's chilling by the bonfire area. She notices a light on in the treehouse in the island on the lake. Dylan and Ryan arrive and tell her about the trail cams, which she doesn't give a shit about because the service out here is non-existent. They must be AT&T customers. Out of sheer boredom, Kaitlyn takes things to 11.
Right, guy. Time to get wood.
Yikes. Wording.
Oh, I know what I said.
Nick and Abby bring the wood, though. And then Emma and Jake irresponsibly announce their presence with a gunshot. Nick is also hype as fuck for those peanut butter pops.
Pop, pop, peanut butter pops.
But Jake isn't willing to share and instead proposes a shooting contest for them where Kaitlyn will officiate to ensure these 2 dipshits don't kill anything. They waste some really good watermelons, but Jake quickly gets himself disqualified when he waves the gun around like an absolute moron. Nick taunts him, but Kaitlyn secretly wants those peanut butter pops and shows the disguise her skills. Fast forward a little ways when the full moon has risen and the counselors all sit around the fire playing a game of truth or dare. As you'd expect with a bunch of college-bound teenagers, the questions and dares are horny as fuck. Emma dares Ryan to kiss either Kaitlyn or Dylan, with both equally eager to be chosen. But that game only lasts 3 rounds when Emma goes full diva and shoves her tongue down Nick's throat to rub it in Jacob's face, and hurt her best friend's feelings at the same time. Nick goes after Abby, and Emma does the same for Jacob, leaving the rest there to be watched by the creepy Hicks. Nick catches up to Abby, and in between cuts that shows something watching them from the trees, he explains Emma was using him to make Jake jealous and 100% succeeded, which is just enough for Abby to go in for some too. They hear a noise and after the board incident earlier are more alert, but not alert enough to stop Nick from getting fucking savaged. The beast is quickly shot off of Nick and Abby is faced with helping or running, but when she goes to help she's also tackled by the thing and promptly saved by a shooter in the woods. Now too afraid to stay, she starts running and eventually finds a small alcove to hide out in. We cut to Jacob after creating an entire saltwater lake with his tears, who is joined by Emma. She only wanted a summer fling, but since they have another night together she tells Jake to undress and they go splish splashing in Jake's tears. But what they don't know is that the first kill on the count sits just a few feet beneath them. This first body is a hiker that went missing a few months prior to the events of the game, confirmed to have been killed by the same beast that attacked Nick. They had a hiking buddy that also went missing, but we never see a body to confirm their death, so they won't be counted. Jacob hears a scream from the woods and at the same time realizes that the rotor arm he had on him is now in the lake, so he chooses to dive underwater in search of it, and gets himself caught in a barbed wire holding down the body. He somehow doesn't get cut up here and is able to pull himself free, but loses the rotor arm forever. Jacob can become the first playable character to die here if you're unable to get him free from the wire and he winds up drowning. But I keep him alive, and when he gets to the surface, Emma is nowhere in sight, and we bounce back to the fire where Kaitlyn, Ryan, and Dylan are rushed by a screaming Abby that informs the rest about what just happened. Kaitlyn hands the shotgun to Ryan and tells him to go check it out, which he does so without question while also appearing reluctant. After some QTEs, he sees this big-ass dude in overalls dragging Nick away, but doesn't want to shoot since he's likely to hit Nick too. But Nick bites that fool, who quickly shoots his finger off. Holy shit. He leaves the teenagers there presumably to nurse that shortened finger, and we switch back to Jacob, who finds himself caught in a trap. The big guy cuts him down and pours blood on him, saying it's great for the skin. We jump back to the bonfire with Abby telling Kaitlyn what she saw and Dylan noticing a large gash on Nick's leg with black stuff around it. He suggests amputation, but Ryan won't entertain his over-the-top ideas. But then a noise from the bushes puts the group at full alert. Ryan readies the gun and we can decide to shoot, which can potentially lead to Jacob getting blasted and added to the count. But I elect to restrain from shooting and Jake pops out unharmed. They ask where Emma is and he says he left her on the island, but Kaitlyn recalls seeing someone in the treehouse earlier and they pivot conversation from that to Jake's appearance. He says Captain Overall smeared blood on him and also tells the rest about the body in the lake before he decides to dip out to find Emma, while the others take shelter inside the lodge like Mr. Hackett suggested. We cut to Emma in the middle of a vlog complaining about Jake's clinginess when she reaches the treehouse and goes inside. She hears a loud thud above her and we need to choose between investigating it or searching the bag. She finds some clothes and some defensive weapons, and then completely disregards our decision and opens the door above her anyway. A beast falls down, completely blindsiding Emma, who reacts quickly and tases the sumbitch and takes photo evidence before running. She goes through a series of QTEs while running away from the creature, until she eventually goes full circle and back into the treehouse.
So many ways for her to die.
Yeah, 7 to be exact. Starting with her decision to check the bag or the door first, and ending with her climbing up the ladder, Emma can die a total of 7 different ways if she makes the incorrect decision or fails certain QTEs. James and Chelsea from Dead Meat sat down with a few members from the cast and game director Will Biles around the game's release and played through some sections of the game. Before this point, the cast hadn't seen any of it, so their genuine reactions to the death scenes is so much fun to watch. Knowing Emma can die, Will decided she'll open the door and get mauled, but showed off another one of the Quarry's features, which is a death rewind. Sometimes a decision leading to a death can be frustrating, so implementing this feature to undo a mistake is a nice way to alleviate those moments.
I mean, I've always wanted to die, so it's really wonderful.
After Emma slams the door beneath her, we switch to Nick, who tells the others he's just really hungry. They go inside the lodge and both Ryan and Dylan go back to Chris's office to use the landline phone, while the others try and patch Nick up. Dylan snatches the shotgun on the wall and Ryan makes things unnecessary unnecessarily complicated by asking what number to call and who to ask for. Dude, just dial 911. But bro wasted too much time with his questions, and as soon as he's connected to an operator, the line is cut. That's followed immediately by the lights.
Probably the weather.
What? Dylan reluctantly hands the gun over to Ryan while they head out to the radio hut to try and call for help. While they do that, we join Emma again, who climbed up onto the roof to reel in the zip line. But the beast skips the huffing and puffing part and just busts its way up top, forcing Emma to jump for it. If she fails this QTE, then she'll wind up falling to her death. But in my game, she makes it and gets to the other side of the water and to safety, for now. Afterwards, we watch as Abby gives Nick a drink and informs him she couldn't find any food, but some large footsteps from the floor above divert their attention away from Nick's rumbly-dumbly. Katie's got a gun, and like a badass, is willing to go check it out. But not like a badass, she is easily disarmed by Sir Overalls. She flees downstairs and we cut to Nick as he confesses his feelings to Abigail, who is far too distracted with their current situation, and that turns Nick aggro. Kaitlyn shows up panicking and urging everyone to hide. So while they do that, we bounce over to Dylan and Ryan, who are being followed as they enter the radio hut. Using his technical know-how, Dylan gets the radio to broadcast outside of the camp's PA system and urgently requests help. Ryan spots one of the creatures outside while a voice comes in over the radio, but this one isn't a helpful one. Instead, it confirms the hunters they've been running into overheard the call for help and now know exactly where they're at. Dylan goes to leave only to immediately shut the door when he sees the thing approaching. It jumps on the roof and Ryan notices Kaitlyn, Abby, and Nick on their way over. Using the PA system, they warn the trio to get inside a cabin and hide, but it's locked and the beast has already spotted them. Dylan has an idea, but needs some time, so Ryan goes outside to distract it from the others and nearly dies before Dylan succeeds in creating a loud feedback loop that chases it away. They barely have any time to discuss what that was before a gunshot echoes out and they spot someone new. They run after her and come across the second kill on the count when a body is found floating in the pool, and Ryan recognizes her as Kaylee Hackett. The chapter ends there with Eliza being way more chipper than she has been previously. We go back to Jake, who runs into Emma. He explains something attacked Nick and Emma shares a similar experience. They hear growling and neither want to stay and find out what's making that noise, but stay or run, they get to meet it anyway. The clumsy monster knocks Emma through the handrail and Jake immediately bails with an apology. He sprints into the forest but gets caught in a bear trap. The scene can end with another one of his deaths with two different causes. If Emma is dead by this point, then he'll die by the beast. Or if he attempts to pull free from the bear trap, he can lose his balance and land headfirst into another trap. Damn! In my game, he tries to pry it open and gets KO'd by one of the hunters instead. We cut back to Nick, who is finding Abby's scent irresistible. Kaitlyn notices and gets a strongly worded demand.
Fuck off, Kaitlyn.
Abby shoves Nick off of her and into the pool, where he flails around like Crispin Glover trying to dance. They pull him out of the water and discover he's colder than a witch's tit, so they take cover in the nearby pool house and realize all of his wounds seem to have disappeared. Abby chats him up, but quickly finds out what a mistake that is when Nick's microaggressions start coming out and he can't contain it anymore and throws her across the room. Oh my god. Abby by this point has had enough and grabs a shotgun so she can blast this dude, which isn't even the most shocking thing that happens when suddenly his skin explodes off his body and he's turned into a werewolf and flees. If Abby doesn't shoot Nick, she becomes the next playable character to die when Nick attacks her. I really love the design of these werewolves and appreciate how Supermassive didn't go a more conventional route. They easily could have made them more wolf-like, but instead made them more similar to their Wendigo design from Until Dawn. But what I like most is their shock-inducing transformation that's so sudden and bloody it stands out among other werewolf transformations, which tend to hammer home how painful and drawn out the whole process is. Emma swam to the dying bonfire after being ignored by the werewolf, which is great, but also not something she's used to, being an influencer and all. She decides to head towards the lodge, but on the way there notices the hunters have trapped one of the werewolves. She hides, but not that well because the old man pulls her down to the ground, where she kicks that fool in the face. Hi-ya! She runs right as another werewolf distracts them, giving her a chance to reach the lodge. It's empty and she'd rather not stay inside that big empty space on her own, so she hides inside the van in the meantime. We go back to Abby as she thinks she killed Nick, but Kaitlyn's like, nah. Right after someone knocks on the door demanding to know where Chris Hackett is. They open the door and meet Laura, who looks a whole lot different than the last time we saw her. The chapter ends there, and Eliza maintains her chipper mood, reminding us that one of the Hacketts is dead. Laura updates everyone inside, starting with the night they arrived at Hackett's quarry. She woke up in a cell where her and Max spent the entirety of summer camp while Travis Hackett, the cop and brother of Chris, kept them captive. With both Laura and Max confused about their situation, they comb through every detail that night and realize Max's wounds are now non-existent. Max poses a crazy idea. There was a full moon the night they were attacked, and maybe, just maybe, werewolves are to blame. Laura thinks him crazy, and Ryan refuses to believe her story.
Shut the fuck up.
Laura resumes it after that interruption, with the couple discussing a way to escape, with knocking out or possibly killing Travis being their lone option. After a month, another full moon is upon them, and Travis is sick of their attitudes, so he leaves Max in his cage and handcuffs Laura to the radiator right outside and tells her not to get too close. Laura, who is going to school to become a veterinarian, is super interested in Max's transformation and asks him to come closer to her so she can observe.
Is this fucking close enough for you, bitch?
Yes, dude, sorry. She witnesses firsthand what the transformation looks like and is too stunned to react before Max lunges at her and connects a claw to her left eye, tearing it out while also freeing her from her bonds. She rushes to the bathroom to confirm her fears, but at least it's not dangling out of her skull hostile style. She gets it bandaged up and realizes she has free reign of the police station, which seems abandoned. The phone is dead and she doesn't want to leave without Max, so instead she finds some of the Dexter knockout juice in a syringe and takes that back to herself for safekeeping. The following morning, Travis wakes her up asking what happened, but the same can be said for you, dude. Somehow looking worse than someone whose eye got ripped out. He hands Max some educational footage and explains to Laura his family is simply trying to survive, but remains vague as fuck the whole time. He demands Laura's help with ending the curse and forces her to read a letter detailing the werewolf affliction.
Frankly, it's shit. Why did they have to make it rhyme?
Travis says every full moon his family has been hunting a white wolf responsible for passing on the disease. He leaves them in their cells and Max apologizes for turning Laura into a pirate. Some days pass by and Laura overhears an argument between Chris and Travis that confirms Chris was the werewolf that attacked Max in the cellar, which means once they get out, they need to find and kill Chris Hackett to cure Max. A little later, Laura fakes being ill, luring Travis into her cell and getting a needle to the neck to render him unconscious. She takes his keys and locks him in the cell, then frees Max to gather werewolf killing supplies from the station. They leave and she tells the others she left Max in the treehouse on the island since it's surrounded by water and will keep him from roaming wild. Showing some concern about that tidbit, Dylan mentions Jake went there looking for Emma, and Laura says she didn't see anyone else when she went to check on Max after shooting Kaylee, thinking it was Chris. In the process of running from Max, she got herself bit, meaning she has very little time to find and kill Chris. So we cut over to Jacob getting dragged into an electrified cell opposite of a caged werewolf. Laura notices Abby's silver bracelet and loads it into a shotgun shell so they can murder werewolves if needed. Kaitlyn points to the creepy house in the woods, thinking Chris might live there. So Laura sets out with Ryan in tow, who isn't too keen on her aspirations to end Chris Hackett's life. Once they get to the house, they fall through some wood and into a pool of water below. Ryan remarks on her wounds being healed and the color of her eyes, and without even trying, he has effortless riz. Laura has a boyfriend in Max and is doing all of this to cure him, but still finds time to flirt with Ryan.
First cave out.
Shut the fuck up.
Never mind, he ruined it. They follow the path to a door, and as they enter, we join the others while they go to the lodge. Kaitlyn doesn't want to sit around and wait, however, so they go outside to the van and hear a noise coming from within. Somehow, Emma doesn't hear them talking from just a few feet away and sprays air freshener in Dylan's face when he opens the door. This scene can end in a few different deaths if Emma was bitten earlier. She takes cover in the van and transforms into a werewolf while inside. So when this group opens the van, she attacks. They all rely on Kaitlyn's expertise with a gun, with Abby, Dylan, and Emma having death opportunities depending on her actions. Thankfully, she's normal in this game, and Kaitlyn checks out the van to confirm what's wrong with it and suggests Dylan accompany her to the scrapyard down the road to search for a rotor arm. While they head that direction, we're bounced back to Ryan and Laura as they find Jacob locked in a cage. He tells Ryan there's a box in the corner they use to operate the cages, but he gets distracted when he prevents Laura from shooting the werewolf in the cage opposite of Jacob, which is a good thing because if he doesn't, then Laura ends Nick's life in his only possible death in the game. While this is going on, Travis informs his mother about Kaylee's death, which she refuses to believe at first until she switches into blaming Travis for it. You can really feel her grief as she realizes Travis isn't lying about Kaylee, and that's in large part due to Lynn Shaye's incredible performance as Mama Hackett. Supermassive assembled a ridiculous cast for this game, with a ton of recognizable faces. Many of them had no experience working on a video game, with Lance Henriksen, who plays Jed Hackett, having 15 other video game in-game credits before the Quarry, which easily eclipses everyone else combined. But my favorite, like many others, is definitely Miles Robbins' Dylan, who is genuinely hilarious and probably the most well-developed character in the game.
Can't wait to see who they choose
What?
to play me in the movie about how brave I am.
Laura and Ryan listen into the familial bickering, and Ryan tells Jacob he'll be safer locked up, and fucking leaves him there. Damn, that's cold. If Ryan does try to help free Jake, it can potentially lead to him dying. If he opens the wrong cage, then the werewolf will descend upon him and end his life. But they leave him there and be dropping eaves on the Hacketts. Other steps give them away, and Constance yanks Laura up by her hair while Ryan runs the opposite direction. The 9th chapter is the one with the largest amount of deaths, but first we check in with Dylan and Kaitlyn discussing the spark between Ryan and Laura and expressing their mutual jealousy. A motion sensor light goes off when they approach the scrapyard, but it appears empty, so they go in while we check in on Abby and Emma, who have taken shelter in the cellar under the lodge. Emma remains painfully positive about the night, while Abby questions how. But not much is happening here, so we'll go back to Laura, who frees herself from Constance's grasp. The old woman smugly tells Laura she can't shoot what she can't see and shuts the light off, then snatches the shotgun and attempts to wrestle it free, only to get her entire fucking face blasted off. If she doesn't die here, there's one more death available to her, which is simply being mauled to death by her werewolf son. But now that Constance is dead, the Hackett family turns hostile, with Jed preparing to shoot Laura, who neo-dodges that shit while Ryan gets stabbed by Bobby. Bobby helps his daddy-o while Ryan finds a place to hide. You can choose to keep the knife in or take it out, but fearing blood loss, we keep it in while he barricades himself in a room. We cut over to Laura as Jed shoots her and expresses his desire to make her suffer, but Laura is a wily one and fights back, knocking old Jedediah on his ass. This presents her with two options: run or attack. If you choose to attack, then she approaches Jed and snaps his feeble little neck of his. But I elect to run, which causes her to smash the electrical panel nearby and shut the power down across the entire house, which has dire consequences for Jacob in the basement, who finds himself alone with Nick and becomes his first victim in werewolf form. If Jake survives past this point, he has 3 other deaths available to him in the final chapter, with all 3 caused by Chris Hackett. Travis demands everyone stop, but Laura is sick of this family and runs off, so we check in on Ryan, who is now face to face with Bobby. Using the knife in his side, he pays Bobby back, whose reaction gave me the best laugh in the entire game.
Oh! You stabbed me! I've never been stabbed before! Dad!
He just leaves Ryan there so Laura can offer to bite him to heal his wounds. If you don't let her bite Ryan, then it can potentially lead to a death via blood loss, so she gnaws on that arm a little bit and helps him up before the Hacketts can find them. We jump to the scrapyard with Dylan and Kaitlyn locating a vehicle that was left suspended in the air for some reason. Dylan volunteers to operate the crane, citing some very relevant experience with claw games as his reasoning.
The kids used to call me the grabber.
When Dylan turns the crane on, some loud music erupts from within, forcing him to scramble to shut it off before he can lower the vehicle down for Kaitlyn to inspect. Shortly after doing so, Dylan notices motion lights turning on and yells down at Kaitlyn to warn her. She jumps in the car and Dylan pulls it up with the magnet, but the werewolf jumps on for the ride. So he starts swinging that thing and winds up throwing Kaitlyn out instead. With her as bait, Dylan drops the car on the werewolf, successfully incapacitating it, which means they can look under the hood of the car, right? Wait guys, where are you going? Check under the hood, wait guys! Both Dylan and Kaitlyn can be killed here by the werewolf, but Kaitlyn has one unique death that consists of her being crushed by a container. We briefly check in on Abby and Emma again, who notice the ladder leading up into the lodge, and decide to check it out, but this scene can become far more interesting if Emma was bit earlier and hasn't turned yet. She'll transform down here, which forces Abby into fleeing via the stairs, which is a surefire death, or fleeing up the ladder, which can lead to another death if a QTE is failed. We go back to Laura and Ryan, who find themselves face to face with a chained werewolf they suspect is Chris. It busts free of its chains easily and approaches them, but his fat werewolf ass breaks the floor and sends all 3 down below right on top of the other Hacketts. Right away, Chris starts attacking Bobby, while Laura finally transforms and aims for Travis. He notices the shards of broken mirror nearby are backed with silver, while Bobby earns himself a spot in the kill count when Chris finishes him off. He immediately goes for a double kill and puts his dad to rest by slamming him repeatedly on the floor. In a moment my wife really regrets she fails to shoot Chris in time, who gets that triple kill by caving Ryan's face in. No takebacks in this run through though. But the death doesn't stop there, because Travis finds himself very headless after stabbing Laura with a silver mirror shard, which puts her on the count as well. This particular sequence can play out a lot of different ways with any number of these characters living or dying. Ryan can succumb to blood loss here if he doesn't accept Laura's bite, or he can get shot by Travis or stabbed again by Bobby. If he survives past this point, he can die at the very end by mauling or via car crash. If Ryan succeeded in shooting Chris, that marks the only time he can be killed in the game, and provides the lone opportunity for them to cure his victims. Travis can get blown away by a shotgun here instead, but if he survives he can get killed at the very end as well. Laura can get shot by Ryan here too, and viciously stabbed by Travis. But if she survives, there's 3 different werewolf-related deaths available to her in the next chapter. Jen and Bobby can survive, but don't have any other possible deaths. The chapter ends after all that violence, and Eliza is basically exploding with glee after watching so many Hacketts retire from life, but reminds us more are still roaming about. After collecting the Hierophant card earlier in the chapter, Eliza reveals a vision that explains her disdain for the Hacketts. She ran a freak show that set up shop near Hackett's Quarry, and part of her show included her supposed son, Silas the dog boy. Chris's kids Caleb and Kaylee thought it distasteful and fucked up she put him on display like that, and concocted a plan to free him. Caleb started a fire to distract everyone else while they freed Silas from his cage, but the fire wound up killing the other 2 members of Eliza's troop, Sheriff Hank Miller, and an unspecified amount of customers. Eliza was taken out by an explosion that sent a metal rod flying into her midsection, which birthed the Hag of Hackett's Quarry tale. A newspaper confirms dozens died in the fire, but since an unspecified number is given, I'll go with the minimum number of 24 since it mentions plural dozens. This includes patrons, the entire troop except Silas, and the local sheriff. And despite all that, Silas returned the favor by biting Caleb, who then went on to bite his sister and his dad. After that large jump in kills, we enter the final chapter with Dylan and Kaitlyn going back to the lodge. We see Emma and Abby are safely locked away in Chris's hidden surveillance room while Dylan and Kaitlyn run from an incoming werewolf. Both of them decide to hide in the same room, but Kaitlyn's breath control is shit and she brings the beast to her location to get brutalized, while Dylan is forced to listen. This is one of the several ways Kaitlyn can die in this chapter, with most coming at the claws and paws of Caleb, but she can also fall to her death or freeze to death if she hides in the freezer. Then as sudden as all these deaths, the sun rises and the game ends. Eliza expresses disappointment that not all Hacketts are dead and threatens to curse us if we come around again. Out of all the surviving characters, most can die in this final chapter, with Dylan getting similar treatment as Kaitlyn. Emma can get bounced by Jacob if he wound up as a werewolf. Max's only available death can come in his only playable segment if Ryan successfully shoots Chris, and Max gets found by Caleb. Caleb himself can be killed twice, once by Kaitlyn, or if Silas is found and killed and Caleb followed Kaitlyn into the freezer and dies there. Hunting Silas down can only happen if Laura, Ryan, and Travis survive, so we never got that far in my game. And that's where the Quarry ends. My ending was super unsatisfying after the eruption and deaths that cut everything short, but the game is still a blast to play with friends and includes a lot of funny moments and awesome kills. I finished with 34 kills in my game and took 7 hours and 54 minutes to complete it, which gives us a kill on average every 13.94 minutes. The minimum kill count achievable is 28. The people at the freak show, Hiker, and Kaylee will die regardless, but to get the optimal ending with the fewest amount of deaths, both Chris and Silas have to die. The most amount of kills that can be achieved is 42. It's difficult to get right naturally, but there is a way to get everyone killed. That wraps up my little supermassive games marathon. I've been wanting to play through these again, so thanks to anyone who has watched and interacted with these videos. It means a lot that people take some time out of their day to check my silly videos out. So huge appreciate each and every one of you, whether you're a new viewer or returning. So thanks as always for watching. I'm King Deschain, signing off for now.